we're going to get started. All right. Well, hello, everyone. It's Jennifer Britton. I'm the CEO of Potentials Realized. This is our second in our fall 2022 community call series. And today's topic is all about group dynamics. So it's always good when I get to be joined. I want to say hi to you, Rola. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
What is important about this topic for you at the moment? Are you coaching groups, coaching teams? Tell us a little bit about what you'd like to share.
I'm coaching groups, and I don't have a long experience in doing that, actually. I started that this year, and I bought your book recently when I was in Canada, and I read it last week. I finished it. And then I started with the links you sent me, the few chapters as well. So I discovered that there are many things that I do, but again, there are so many things that I don't do, and I would like to incorporate. Actually, it's not like I started without having any idea about group coaching. I have attended a community of practice, and I've worked with the master coach that I mean, he's my mentor and the master coach where I was certified in the academy. And he mentioned your book, and I think you know him. He's Dr. Harris Sayed.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So I interacted with him a lot, and he knows that I'm really interested in this topic, and he referred your books to me, and this is how I read a lot about the topic, and I designed the group, the program, based on everything that I knew about that. So yeah, but of course your book is like the Bible for group coaching, which I enjoyed a lot.
Well, I'm glad it's fallen into your hands, and as I've continued to see over the years, really, like, it's a book that really first in the series, and it's still relevant today. I think maybe I'm going to reach out to Wiley to see if we want to do an update. They control the rights. It's always interesting when you're traditionally published, who owns rights and things, but I think it's time for a bit of an update, which is why I keep writing. So I want to welcome you, Rola. We've also got Rita. Hey, Rita, good to see you. I know Ivana was going to be with us today. How are you doing today, Rita?
Oh, can't complain, but I don't have my office right now.
Well, that's okay. Well, great for you to be here. We're going to keep this to about 30 minutes. So people who are joining us, this is the second in our fall series. I'll be here most, but not all Tuesdays of the fall. We're going to be doing a week on team, a week on group, and then a week on reconnecting workspaces, so hybrid work. So if you're a team coach, a group coach, or a hybrid coach or leader, please join us. So today is a topic, I think, that I put it under the umbrella of group coaching, but it really is applicable to anyone working with more than one person, whether you're coaching teams, coaching groups, you're a leader, and really wanted to spend some time getting into like the dynamics of group coaching. So just a little quick overview of where we're going next. If you're watching this in series, first one of the fall was talking a little bit about the group and team coaching superpower quiz, which actually was finalized yesterday. I've not released it yet, but it will be out in the next few days. If you're a group or team coach and really want to focus more on your presence, who you are, how you're showing up, your range as a coach, I think you're going to be really interested in the team and group coaching superpower quiz. So that'll be like my fun content contribution this fall. Stay tuned for more on that, but you will be able to see a thumbnail in the next couple of days linking you to that quiz. And it's something you can do by your phone. It'll take about 2 minutes. You'll have about 15 questions to answer, and then it's going to give you one of 5 different styles. The fun thing about that is if you choose to share your email address, then you'll get an autoresponder with your report. And you'll also be invited to set up a 15-minute call with myself or one of the team members to talk a little bit more about what is your style, how can you use that to magnify your style. So really looking forward to it because it's been based on almost 2 decades of work now that I've done with teams and group coaches, and really want to help all of you think about how do you scale your impact. So part of it is us, but part of us is also our clients. And that truly is our focus today on group dynamics. And many of you will know and be probably familiar with this, commonly known as Tuckman's model, really emerged in the 1970s. And really, it's, again, gold standard. This would be something that, whether I've been leading teams myself or coaching teams and groups, it's something that I've seen play out time and time again, often more augmented or magnified when we're working in very intensive environments. And as some of you know, as a leader in my former world of work with the United Nations, in the global sector, you know, my teams would change every 3 to 36 months. And so you would see these group dynamics playing out, whether we were together for a quarter or whether we were together for a 3-year period. And in more intense environments, and I'm not by any means, I am not a skydiver, but I think in some of my work that I did in the Amazon, we were quite remote, we were quite under extreme conditions, sometimes life and death, and that actually magnified a lot of these group dynamic elements. So today I wanted to share a little bit more about these 5 stages. Again, it's Tuckman's model, started evolving in the 1960s and into the 70s. He originally proposed it as a 4-stage model where teams and groups come together initially in a forming stage, then move through what is commonly uncomfortable of conflict as a team starts to gel, eventually getting into understanding who they are as a team and developing norms so that they can then step into this phase of performing. Now, what he found, what Tuckman found after years of his research and work, was actually there was a final stage, and that final stage he later named adjourning, or really is the closure. And if you're part of project teams, you will note the adjourning phase. And for group coaches like you, Rola, and Rita, you do a lot of work with groups. Adjourning is key. How are we celebrating at the end of a process? How are we providing that closure? So I'd like to invite you, whether you're here live or you're here listening in, think about the different groups that you're working with right now. And as we go through this, I want you to be thinking about what stage are they at. Now, some of you might be listening to this as part of a blended learning assignment, and whether you're working with a group or a team, same question, you know, what and where is the team or group right now? What support do they need? And how can you really help to move them, continue moving them? Now, keep in mind, like a staircase, and you don't have that analogy here, like a staircase, groups can move up the stairs from forming to storming to norming, etc., but they can also go down the staircase. And I think that's really important to keep in mind because groups and teams are not a static entity. They are always in evolution. And so part of our work, especially as coaches, is to be asking, where are you now and what do you need? Where do you want to go? And what's going to help you, of course, go from A to B or B to A. So with that, a couple of references I'm going to be drawing upon today. I'm actually going back into my 2017 writing in Effective Virtual Conversations. And if you have a copy of that book, head on over to effectivevirtualconversations.com. There is actually on that website a whole series of templates that you can access as a book purchaser. You'll find the code in the front end of the introduction, but because you're here, I'm going to put it in chat for you. And so you can at any time just go in and you know, access these. There's multiple templates that accompany that book. So this is my 2017 book, well in advance of the pandemic and the move to virtual work. But you will find a lot of very useful templates and resource guides like the one I'm zooming into today, which is really looking at group development and Tuckman's model in the virtual domain. So whether you're working in person, virtually, or hybrid, there are these 5 stages that show up time and time again. And I'm going to be getting into some of those nuances, touching on some of the hybrids, but also, you know, what can we do as a coach? What's important for us to notice? What conversations are important for us to spark? So I'll be following pretty closely along this and would encourage you, head on over to effectivevirtualconversations.com. When you're there, you'll find a page that says downloads and templates for the book. You've now got the code and you can enter that. And this is under, I believe, chapter 5. There are different chapters. It's either chapter 4 or 5, but you'll see it under group development and Tuckmans Model. So we start out at first with our forming stage. And for each of these stages, I want to go sort of through the what, the why, and the how. And I think we can all think of a group that we've been a part of or a team where it's those early days. We come together, there's usually a lot of excitement. And part of our work is to not only understand who we are, but to start understanding why we're there. And so whether we're a group coach or a team coach, you'll be wanting to get and definitely build into usually a first call time for the group to understand who they are, what they're bringing individually and collectively to the group, what some of those common on-ramps or connection points are, and also how does the group want to work together. Those are really some of the core elements that you may spend anywhere from 30 to even 60 minutes. In fact, very early this morning, I kicked off a group in Europe. We spent about 45 minutes today in that forming stage of doing introductions, helping the group really start seeing. I asked them the question after their introductions, what do you notice about common ground and common elements? And because they were a group of about 12 people, that conversation took time. We then, after introductions and seeing some of the common ground, then moved into creating what many of you know that I call the WOW, the ways of working, or it could be called your team agreements, your group agreements. These are our commitments to each other on how we're going to create a positive learning environment. So that's sometimes a 5-minute conversation to create your group agreements. Sometimes with a team, it might actually extend into half an hour, right? And I know, Rolla, you shared you're doing some work with teams. I think this is a component that even if a team has been together for years, we don't want to assume that they have agreements in place. We don't want to assume that they have norms, which really spell out how we do things. It's an inherent part of culture development. And again, going back to some of the more recent years of research around team effectiveness, we know from things like Project Aristotle, it's not only having psychological safety that creates team connection and high performance, but it's also having these shared agreements. So the how of the forming really is the intros, the ways of working, the group seeing their connections, whether that's metaphorically or just like, the on-ramps. Now, I'm going to go back here because I just want to sort of draw attention to a couple of things that might be happening virtually or hybrid. Can people see each other? Do they know each other? If you're working with a global team, as I have for my entire career over 3 decades, we're probably going to be geographically dispersed. So how do we also help in the forming stage, people understand context? What's outside your window? What's on your desk? What's a priority? And that's a key part of starting to build that trust, safety, and connection that I write about in my work, the triad of trust, safety, and connection. If we don't take time to really spend time on forming, and we jump right in to talk about results and just getting things done, we lose a very important opportunity. And it's likely that at some stage, if you try to progress up the staircase, the group will come back. They just don't have that solid base. So in a team, very practically, you can see people starting to what is the word that I want to say? Like they're starting to be like, okay, let's get going. Or they're like, twiddling their thumbs saying, do we really need to do this? And usually, again, research and practice, if you don't spend enough time on forming and creating that foundation of knowledge of who we are and how we want to operate, either the card deck will fall, the team will collapse, or they're going to go through a lot more extended phases, like they'll stick more in storming because they just haven't had conversations around who they are, why they're there, what's important, how they want to even operate through conflict, which is our second stage. So before I go there, I just want to pause. Rita, Rolla, as you think about forming, like, is there anything that stands out to you? Tools that you use, questions you like to ask, or things that you've noticed as teams and groups are in that forming stage?
I really like I really like getting a chance for everybody to express what their expectations are, because that way there's no secrets. There's nothing hidden behind the curtain. That's really where I start. And then I can explore whether or not there are any differences. And I can also see how they answer. Even if it's online, you can still see how they answer to see if perhaps they've been prepped by somebody to answer the same way. And if you see that, you can probe that as well.
Yeah, and that's such a good one, right? Like prepping in, especially in a team context, if you're an external coach coming in, you know, what is the discussion? What are you picking up in that forming stage as well? How about you, Rolla? When you think of forming, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I do the same what Rita have said, so I'm not going to talk about that. The expectation about, by the way, I do group coaching, not team coaching.
Yes.
Yeah, group coaching. So I do that, but at the beginning, what I do is I spend some time on rules of engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And I discuss that, not in a way that, so I impose it on them. So I have the points, and then we discuss them. What do you understand by, let's say, feedback? What do you understand by this? What does that mean to you, etc.? And we get the conversation going. And at the end, I tell them, I'm gonna call you on if you breach the contract or the agreement. Sometimes if it's presential, I can hold a card or something. Like if I hold this card, it means that you have you have breached the contract, or let's get back to pause, to reflect, and to take some time to, take the conversation forward. So I figured out that one time I did not establish the rules of engagement from the start. It wasn't a pleasant, let's say, kickoff. And then I started doing that in the beginning, and it puts like a frame, a sort of frame. And I think they relax when they know that, okay, this is the boundary, or these are the rules of engagement. And this is what it's expected from everybody in the group, including myself. And of course, the expectation. I also do an icebreaker in the beginning. Yeah.
And to help people get to know each other, I'm imagining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, who are you? Like, I saw that in your book. Like, who are you, or what do you want to share with others? What are you bringing? What is the uniqueness that you are bringing to the group? This is the first icebreaker that I do.
Yeah. And the piece that I would add, it's interesting. One thing, people are always like, okay, so I can use that. Anything you read in effective group coaching is definitely, it's based in practice. And the one evolution I would say I've added in recent years is in making it even more coaching focused. We also want to add not only who are you and what do you bring that's unique, but we want to ask people to also share what will success look like at the end of our time together, right? That's very much a coaching process, and everyone, as they listen in, especially in a group, is going to hear something very different. So that is another layer of that connection, and what both of you said with the expectations. What's our frame? How wide is our frame, especially in a virtual group where there might be very different needs and interests that show up? So
I have a question, Jennifer. Can I ask? Yeah. So sometimes I wonder whether, when we ask about the expectation of every member in the group at the beginning, without, these members know the agenda of the entire group coaching, how would that affect? I mean, they come to the, let's say, when I do group coaching, it's a specific topic. So in your book, you go and you explore what is the focus, the areas of focus, and you build on that. What I do, I took it the safe way because I'm a beginner, and I wanted to, I wanted to have, like there is a material that it's a hybrid, it's coaching and a small segment of training, of knowledge, let's say, and backed by theory. So I wonder whether this is a question for you. Shall I, before asking them about the expectation, shall I tell them these are the focus point of the entire program, or ask that question before?
Well, again, I think, especially, you said it yourself, you're doing a hybrid. So you're going to lead more with coaching, which would be, the frame would then be, let's involve people from the start, co-create. Or are you going to be more training, which is pushing out and saying, here's what it is, here's the frame of content, now what will you fit in with? So I think a lot of that is, if you are doing a hybrid, you inevitably find that you're doing one or the other. The other piece that I would add as part of the forming stage that we haven't touched on is also, are you doing some pre-calls, right? Are you meeting with people before you kick off, whether there's content or no content, to ask people to really think about and share, be ready to share what's brought them to the program, right? There will always be something that has attracted someone to say, yes, I want to invest my time and attention and focus. So, we can keep it as simple as possible, but don't forget you've got that pre-call as well, which is another way to get people thinking about their own success path. And it's really important because once we go out of forming, right, we see how we're connected, but we're still on an individual pathway. If we are coaching groups, teams, it's different, but I'm going to go into more the group coaching piece here, because in the storming stage, right, groups, and you'll often see this in the second call, people will come back. Some are like, I'm so ready to go. Others are like, I'm not really sure why I'm here. This isn't maybe meeting my needs. And that's just natural, right? It's not anything we have to fix. Again, from a coaching perspective, we're helping people really notice what they want out of the process. So exploring the questions like, what? Why are we here? What's important about this? How is this going to help me? And in a group, how's it going to help me individually? So we really want to get people thinking about quick wins around their goals, back to that goal piece. We also want to make sure that people feel connected and that it's okay for people to have this feeling. In fact, one of my mentors early on in experiential education said, because I said to her, like, how do you deal with conflict with new groups? This is when I was like 17 years old. And she's like, Jen, don't ever worry about this, right? Like, it's like groups that really will gel have to go through a bit of that rub. They have to go through a bit of that conflict in order to evolve. And conflict can look like many things, right? It's not always like a bashing of heads. It can be a difference of opinion. And the more safety we have, the more we can come and say, you know what? I see things really differently. And that's a type of conflict, but it's a respectful dialogue. It's a discourse where we can really say to each other, you know what? I think it's fantastic. You're on a different path and I'm on a different path. I totally respect where you're coming from, but I have a different set of opinions. And so it's that approach, that diversity of thought and opinion and experiences that we really want to capitalize on in storming. So as a group coach, as a team coach, really, like, be aware of your response to conflict. I think a lot of coaches step into, I got to fix this. There's something wrong. I got to fix this. Actually, you know what? It means that people are leaning in. People care enough that they are leaning in. Our work then is to really help remind people, remind themselves, why are you here? What's important about this? What are you committed to individually and collectively? So those are very specific questions, and you'll notice, things that you want to make sure that you're doing, normalizing conflict, reinforcing those ways of working or the agreements that we touched on earlier. And so there may be some different focus areas you'll see on the activities you may want to use. You might really help to clarify if it's a team. This is where we might clarify roles and tasks and, connection points. If it's a group, it's a recognition that, you're probably all on a different pathway, and how do we support each other? How do we connect in and support each other? There may need to be some training. This is where training around difficult conversations can also come in as well. So I could, as you can hear, I could talk about this forever. I'm looking at our time. We've got about 4 minutes left, 5 minutes left to look at the rest of our theme areas. So I may come back as do a part 2 of this. I'm going to just clear the screen now because I think there's one more slide here. Let's see if I put the slide in. Nice thing. There we go. Let's go. So we did forming, storming, and then of course we have norming. And just a reminder that with norming, it really is about helping a group understand, who they are in their connectivity, collectivity. So in norming, even at a group level, it's about helping the group understand what are your different roles? How do you as a group want to operate? Maybe there's someone who is always about getting things started, getting the party started, getting the conversation started. Maybe there's someone who's good at keeping time. And virtually, you're going to want to make sure, as you see here, that you're very specific around how much of this is about like us collectively as the group, and how much of it is about us individually, right? If we are coming together as a group from, let's call it 6 participants, 6 time zones, 6 countries, and we're together for 2 hours a week for 6 weeks, we're going to spend some time building that trust. But for most of us, we're on our own pathway. And it's okay to sort of not have to do everything collaboratively. So the big question is, how do we operate together? We may be helping people connect in with their values, their behaviors. And once again, it's that continued building of trust, safety, and connection as you go. So we have an option here. I can either rush through performing and adjourning, or we can take a question or two. What would you like to do? Rita, Rolla. Rita, what are you getting called?
I'm thinking a part 2 is in order.
Happy to do a part 2. Yeah, I think we could do a part 2 because I think this is really an important piece. And, performing and adjourning in and of themselves, we could spend a lot of time. So why don't we take our last 4 or 5 minutes to talk a little bit more about norming. Rolla, are you good if we just pause at the end of norming rather than try to rush?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No worries.
So for you, like norming, what is important for you in norming with the groups you're working with right now, or the groups you're planning to work with? Any thoughts? Rolla, any thoughts on what you want to make sure you leave space for?
I don't have any thought right now.
Okay.
Regarding that.
If I may, I'll throw out a couple of, again, looking at some of these nuanced questions, revisiting once again our ways of working, right? Like we create them in week 1, but by week 3, is it still relevant? We want to check that in. By week 2 or 3, we're getting a pretty good sense of what's needed to help calls really evolve. And you might see that there's need for a new role, right? I mentioned like timekeeper, social coordinator. Maybe there are members of the group that want to take a more active role. So we want to be looking at that as well. And in norming, we want to make sure that it's, we're activating all of what I call the engagement levers. So you'll see here, are we doing breakouts? Are we even using annotation? Are we really seeing who we are and what we need in order to step into the performing phase? So we're going to come back in a future call. It won't be next week because next week will be coaching supervision. But one of our future calls, I want to talk about performing and how do we really help groups not only get set up for success, because really these first 3 stages are setting people up for success, but in performing, how do we help people really soar? And part of that is working through mindset issues. Some of that is resourcing. Some of that is clarity of focus and thinking about accountability, all the nuance of coaching. But with norming, we need to get through this stage so that people feel really ready to knock it out of the park. And so norming can happen quickly, but it can also happen over multiple calls. you're going to get a sense at this stage, like usually session 2 or 3, are people really getting into this? Do they have all they need in order to really hit the gas and get going with whatever they're working on? So I'm always thinking of like business owners, right? Business owners and business coaching, by the performing stage, they're getting really activated. They have clarity around their vision. They have an idea around their resourcing, their support structures. And so part of norming as well is helping people understand the context, further understand the context, our work as a group in the coaching process, but also their context and what they can be pulling on. So think about norming as, it is a critical part of setting people up for success. It's who we are as a group, but also who we are in our individuality and who we are in relation to our goals that we've set. So that's what I wanted to share today. I would love to stop our call or wrap up our call with one last question for both of you, which is, as you go forward, what is the area you want to pay attention to? So Rolla, we'll start with you. In your groups, upcoming groups, which one do you want to pay more attention to?
In the Tuckmans model, you mean?
Yeah, in the Tuckmans model.
Yeah.
Storming, norming. Which one?
Yeah. I think like I consider them all the foundation to be able to do like to kick off the gas, as you have said. So I think forming and storming, if these are well established, the norming would come as a result, I think, more of a result. So forming and storming are very important to me.
Yeah. And just like the staircase, right? If the staircase foundation is rickety, if it's not strong, we really can't move into that norming stage. We need those stages to be firm and solid, or else we'll keep going up and back, right? We'll just keep moving back and forth and maybe never progressing to performing, right? Like there is a school of thought, especially in the team realm, that teams will not get to performing if some of these elements are not met. So that's, again, part of the discourse and research that we've seen over many decades now. But I have worked with, senior leaders who will actually pause projects and help the team move backwards so that they can really move forward. It's that slow down to, speed up principle. Yeah. So how about you, Rita? What are you thinking of today? Anything that's relevant for you?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated between, teams that struggle between storming and norming before you even get to performing, because sometimes folks will give you lip service and no accountability. They'll say they're willing to commit to change, or they're willing to change their style of, say, communication or something like that. And then you check back with them and they haven't made a single change, right? So it's holding that accountability. From a coaching perspective, you can do so much. If it's a working team, say in a team coaching situation, do they have buy-in from, their managers, their executives, and so on, to be able to back you up? So I always find that a little bit fascinating. So just, trying to find, I guess, better ways to communicate that importance without sounding like you're being mean or anything like that, right? Like, you want to do it in a nice way.
Absolutely. And all of this is about being respectful, but also drawing on the group as well. Yeah. So with that, I think that is time. We've gone a little bit longer, but I want to say thanks to have, it was great to have both of you on the call. Hope you might come back next week for coaching supervision. We also have a bonus call this Thursday as well. So we're going to do 2 layers of coaching supervision, one this Thursday and another one early next week on our regular Tuesday timeframe.
What time's the Thursday?
Thursday is going to be, I think, 12 o'clock Eastern as well. Okay. So Kathy and I'll lead something around coaching supervision in lead up to our supervision groups for the fall. Perfect. All right, Rolla, will you be able to come back and join us for a future call on a Tuesday or a Thursday?
Yeah, I guess yeah, it's the same time, 12 your time, like ET time.
12 Eastern, yeah. Usually, so the Tuesday calls are all at the same half-hour-ish block. This Thursday happens to be at the same time as well. So
okay, just a question, Jennifer. This like I can come whenever I want, no strings attached. Like
no strings attached. You can come in,
okay,
drop in there where a lot of
okay,
these calls go, so that they go up to our YouTube channel, and so they're accessed by our alumni and the wider world. It's my commitment to really keep the conversation going around groups. So,
yeah.
different people come all the time. If you want to come regularly, it would be great to see you.
All right, thank you so much.
All right. Have a good
Thank
afternoon
you.
or evening, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye,
Bye.
Rita.
Yeah.
Bye, Jennifer. Bye.